Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar for Helix Resources Limited, ASX code HLX. Shortly we'll be hearing from Managing Director Mike Rosenstrike, who will run you through a formal presentation about the recent capital raising and Helix Resources being all in copper in Cobar. I would remind everyone that we will be conducting a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, but if you do have any questions, please submit them via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll endeavour to answer as many of those as we can at the completion of the presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mike Rosenstrike, Managing Director of Helix Resources. Mike, over to you.
Thank you very much, David. All in copper and Cobar, I think, reflects the strategy that I brought to the company when I joined in January of last year. The idea was to create a vehicle that was well funded and was focused solely on its projects in the greater Cobar region and predominantly on copper. So we've been through a process of cleaning out and rationalizing any other assets. So you won't see the company going off to do iron ore in the Pilbara or lithium in Argentina. We're very much focused on finding more copper in Cobar. So this map picture is really just trying to put together a snapshot of what Helix is about at the moment. And a key aspect of our investment proposition is that we have a very strategic land holding over 2,000 square kilometres in the central Cobar region of New South Wales. And you can see our two land packages there on the western and eastern side, and both of them cover prodigiously mineralised structures related to the CSA copper mine, for example, and Triton's operations on the eastern side there. And we've had some success on those two structures. We've had high-grade copper intercepts around our Cambeligo project. We've had some good hits on our CZ project on that Colorina Trend. And all of our projects are really well located in terms of existing operations, in transport infrastructure, and local townships. We're only 50 kilometres from CSA's mine or Triton or the Peak Hero Peel deposits. We're really on the hunt for these large-scale, high-grade copper deposits, and we've got numerous prospects and targets emerging through which I think can achieve our exploration objectives. Historically, the company's been undercapitalised and we've tended to do piecemeal type of exploration. Now we're truly well funded and we're really going to hit all of our targets very hard. We have recently announced a placement. We have commitments for $11 million to predominantly institutional shareholders, people who are very experienced in the mining investment game, and they've backed us. That placement is being done at 1.2 cents. It's a large raise for a company of our size, but that's the kind of funding that we and our investors felt was meaningful to take our projects forward in a really serious fashion. We've also announced that there'll be a share purchase plan that goes with that for $2 million, and shareholders should look out. There will be some documents coming your way in the course of the next couple of weeks. And if there's any questions on any of this, then please don't hesitate to contact the company. There's a bit of a timetable as to when various elements of this $13 million raise are expected to complete. So a bit of a snapshot of the company as it was just before we made this announcement. Our share price was around 1.5 cents and we had a market cap of 20 cents. We had excitement in our share price in May of last year when we announced some massive high-grade copper sulfide hits. But frankly, since that time, the share price has waned, and I think partly that's due to external factors, but partly internal. We haven't managed to keep up the momentum of exploration activities and hence the flow of news and results. We think now with this extra funding and the fact that we've built up our exploration team based in Orange, that we're going to be able to address that momentum aspect. You'll note here, all of the executive management team listed on the left-hand side there are new since I joined, and Gordon Barnes, our exploration manager, joined us in May of last year, and he and his team are all based in Orange, New South Wales. There'll be some changes to the board coming up. Tim Kennedy's resigned because he's taken on a full-time position, and Jason McDonald is elected to retire, and we are on the hunt for a new non-executive director. So this picture here really highlights the strategic nature of our land holding, again, in the context of what it is that our neighbours do. Glencore at the CSA mine, and this has been in the news a lot recently because it's apparently for sale, they're making 50,000 tonnes of copper in concentrates every year. And to the north of us, Triton have been throwing off about 20 to 25,000 tonnes of copper every year for the last 20 to 30 years for each of those two operations. And we have groups like Aurelia with their Peak gold operations and their Hera base metals project, which is about to undergo a major expansion with the development of the Federation ore body. And then recently, Peel Mining have done a large capital raising as well, I think to make the transition from explorer into project developer. So it's a very exciting neighbourhood to be involved in at the moment. And with our new funding position, we're determined to be players in part of that activity. So if we zoom in on our land holding itself, here you can see our Western and Eastern group tenements, which cover three key mineralised trends. The Rochford Trend across here, the Colorina Trend up and down, north and south here, south of Aeris's Triton operations, and in the earlier stage Mariula Trend. We have the Cambeligo resource located here on Rochford, and we have our CZ resource located here on Colorina. One of the points I'd like to make with this slide, and it demonstrates our commitment to this region for exploration and a change in exploration philosophy since last year, and that is that aerial or electromagnetic surveys are a key exploration tool in this region. And up until early last year, only this area outlined in white had EM coverage. Shortly after joining, we raised some money, and within a week or two after that, we flew the rest of the mineralized structures with VTEM to gather that regional data set. And you'll see me referring to it through the rest of the presentation, and it really demonstrates our commitment to the exploration and doing methodical, systematic, regional exploration to make sure we capture all opportunities that we can. As I said earlier, I think last year was very much about establishing a new exploration team and a new exploration strategy. And I think we've been very successful in that, with high-grade copper intercepts on prospects on both of those trends. And now this year is all about picking up the pace and expanding the resource base and advancing new prospects. Let me walk you through that. Let's go first to the Rochford Trend on the western side. What are we hunting for here? We're hunting for what we call Cobar style deposits. These tend to have quite small footprints and very long vertical extents. I've got an example here of CSA's copper mine. It's one of the highest grade copper mines in the world, and it's been operating now, and I think it's third phase, for over 20 years. These are very rewarding discoveries if you can get onto one. I think we've got the potential, or we may be starting to unearth signs that are very similar to the style of mineralization. If we have a look at this Rochford Trend, we have a pipeline of copper opportunities here. We've got the Cambeligo deposit in the central area, 1.5 million tonnes at 1.2% copper. And we've recently talked about, or made reports about, the opportunity for parallel lodes, very similar to what you see at the CSA mine, where you've got parallel lodes. We've intersected high-grade copper in this area, such as 14 meters at 4.2%. And as part of that test for parallel lode structures, we've also talked about visible copper sulfides being intersected at a recent drill program. And then we've got a range of earlier stage prospects up and down this Rochford Trend. I think our work is starting to demonstrate real potential for this Cobar style mineralization. This is a long section through the Cambeligo mineral resource. This is a grade times meters plot. What you can see here is the historic resource outlined in this pink shell. It's about 400 meters in this direction and about 200 meters north-south. I'd like to point out that this entire Rochford area has had no work since about 2013. And it was only we started drilling here in April of last year. And very quickly in our second drill hole, we hit 14 meters at 4.2% copper, highlighting the presence of a high-grade massive copper sulfide shoot in this area here, highlighted by these green shapes, which represent the downhole electromagnetic models. Recently, we've completed hole 6, which also had a zone of massive copper sulfide mineralization. We've yet to get the assays from that. But it's interesting to note, we're still open at depth. And remember, these Cobar style ore bodies tend to be most continuous in the vertical direction. And the highest tenor intercepts are beneath the current resource outline. So we've got lots of work to get on with on this prospect. One of the things that everybody's reading about is the time lag in assay laboratories, and it's impacting on us as well. The positive thing about copper is that the mineralization tends to be very visual, and we're able to guide our drilling and inform the market with visual estimates of our copper mineralization, as you can see by these pictures here. Chalcopyrite, one of the key copper sulfide minerals, being quite yellow and having a brassy sort of a luster. If we look now at this greater cambeligo area in plan, this here is the projection of that resource in plan view. And then we interpreted that there was an opportunity for parallel lode structures occurring out here to the west, structure 1 and structure 2. And late last year, we tested that with shallow reverse circulation drilling, and we hit copper sulfides in just about every hole, defining what we think are 2 parallel lode structures. So that was a great result. Assays are pending, and we're hoping to get those assay results in late March. So you can see that we're starting to develop and evolve a very encouraging story for Cobar style mineralization at Cambeligo and potentially along that Rochford Trend. Now let's just zoom out a little bit on that Rochford Trend. If we look at this 20-kilometer extent, we have other prospects that we're very excited to get working on as well. So here is this greater Cambeligo area. It lies within this shaded tenement, which is the joint venture that we have with Eris Resources. It's a 70-30 joint venture with Helix holding 70 and managing. Both companies fund, and both companies collaborate technically to advance the prospects. You can see just to the south of that greater Cambeligo area, we have the Caballero, and then further south, the Bijou prospects. Now, what's intriguing about these is that historically, there were soil and geochemical soil anomalies there, and they were tested with shallow RC scout drilling. And that RC scout drilling was very successful, 33 meters at 0.2% copper or 0.7% copper. That is what scout drilling is all about. Yet, it's never been followed up. That drilling was completed in 2013. Similar story at Bijou. Geochemical anomaly in soil, scout drilling, great scout drilling results, never followed up. I think this is a bit symptomatic of this campaign or undercapitalized nature of the company in this campaign style exploration. When we did the VTEM surveys early last year, the VTEM lit up these 2 prospects as well, really emphasizing that these are properties that we should be ranking very highly to do further exploration work on. We have a similar situation at the north, up here, Boppy Broken Hill. Again, the VTEM is reinforcing, look at me, come and test these prospects. So we've got a lot of work to do up and down the Rochford Belt, a lot of prospects emerging and coming through, and hopefully we'll be able to advance them to resource definition style drilling. That is the massive copper sulfide intercept that we extracted from drill hole 6. We're still waiting for the assays for that. In terms of that work that will now be able to accelerate by virtue of the capital raising that we've just announced, we're going to do lots of drilling in terms of reverse circulation and diamond drilling to follow up some of those prospects and new prospects that we will generate, as well as the typical sort of surface prospecting work to firm up our targets, as well as some early mine development, metallurgical mine study type work to not only demonstrate that we are finding more copper tons, but to also to verify that we're able to sensibly process them. Overall, our objective is to find more copper and prove up our Cobar style deposit potential. So let's now move to the eastern side of the property, the Colorina Trend. This is an 80-kilometre long zone, which is exactly the same stratigraphy that trends to the north into Eris's Triton operations. What we're looking for here are Triton-style ore bodies. These are geologically similar, but distinct from the Cobar-style deposits to the west. These tend to have ribbon-like geometry structures, as shown by this long section through the Constellation deposit, which is owned by Eris. Similar for Eris's Triton ore body here, this long section. And here is an early interpretation from Helix's CZ deposits, the same ribbon-like geometry. What we have at Triton is a major copper camp, which has over 30 years of copper production. This is a planned view of our tenement position, sitting just south of the Barrier Highway, just south of Eris's Triton copper processing plant, and right on these major regional copper trend extending from north to south, and then down here to Loxley's copper projects down this way. On this trend, we have our CZ deposit, 2 million tonnes at 2% copper and a little bit of gold. And then we have numerous historical prospects which have had some interest, have generated some results, but haven't had the follow-up. Our VTEM survey has come along. It's helped us to rank and prioritize these targets, and it's generated new discrete EM conductors in its own right. And that motivated us to increase our land holding out to the eastern side here to make sure that we captured any potential targets extending over the tenement boundaries. I would point out that we also acquired recently the Homeville laterite nickel cobalt deposit. This was part of a transaction with Alpha HPA, whereby there were conflicting and overlapping royalty and joint venture rights between the two parties. And we did a transaction whereby we acquired all of the licenses there and removed all of those rights. And we've ended up with that nickel cobalt resource. It's a bit of a side project for us, but I think there's genuine value there, which we will work quietly to extract for shareholders. So if we have a look at the plan view deposit, this is sulfide mineralization which extends from the west and plunges down here to the east. As you can see, 14 meters at 4%, 11 at 7, 12 at 5. This is a genuine high-grade copper zone, and it's about 1,200 meters from left to right. We've done drilling in this area halfway through in the latter part of last year, and we've had some good hits in the middle here, and we've also generated metallurgical samples. When we've tested various concepts for the resource extending down plunge, we've had some hits and misses, and we're still reinterpreting or reviewing that. I guess one of the headwinds that we've had, which has impacted that momentum that I spoke about, is it's difficult to explain, but there is 60-odd drill holes shown in yellow here, which have never been geologically logged. And it's those kind of things that do create a bit of a headwind for our progress. But we had a good little win here, finding a new shallow high-grade oxide copper resource with nice grades, 7 meters at 2.6, 7 meters at 2.8 in this over 100 meter long zone down here, which is still open to the southeast. So we would like to do that metallurgical test work. We'd like to develop the geological model through here because there is clearly significant copper mineralization. We just need to do the detailed geological work to understand the model here. But it remains a very exciting prospect for us. What I'd really like to achieve along the Colorina Trend is I'd like to demonstrate that some of those other prospects along there, such as Hermidale and Quanda and some of those VM anomalies, I'd like to demonstrate their potential to come through as emerging resources and move them through to resource definition style work so that we're starting to enable people to make direct comparisons between what's happening to the north around the Triton operations, and that we have similar opportunities to the south on that same Colorina Trend on our tenements. So the overall focus for the next 12 to 18 months is moving opportunities up that pyramid. What we're showing in this pyramid is increasing exploration success as we move from anomalies and targets through to prospects with, say, ore grade intercepts up into resources, and then following mine studies into potentially into reserves. And now that we have some very significant funding and support from these institutional investors, we're able to give that work a much bigger boost and achieve, I think, a lot more in a shorter time frame. Overall, what we're looking to achieve here is, say, a 200,000 tonnes contained copper that would justify a standalone operation. Potentially, any scale of resource could be commercialized given the abundant processing infrastructure that occurs around us. But I think where the real fun and the real return for shareholders comes from is if we get onto one of these elephant scale deposits, such as CSA's copper mine near Cobar. I think that's where the real fizz factor is in our share price, and we're always in the hunt for that as long as we are exploring and we are drilling. So we've done a lot of work. I think we've achieved a lot since last year when we've implemented a new strategy. We've put a new management team in place. We've focused ourselves on copper and the Cobar, and I think that has, with initial funding, has proven to be successful. We're now updating the share register. We're trying to build in stability. We've had this very significant institutional participation in the placement we've announced, and we've got this board rejuvenation happening right now. What all that enables us to do for the rest of this year is drill out resources, drill out prospects, generate lots of targets, kill a lot of them, but advance some of them. And that's what exploration is all about. And not only do we want to find the copper tons, but we also want to demonstrate that they are able to be processed sensibly and mined sensibly. So we'll do the underlying mining studies. Ultimately, we want to build up the copper resource and demonstrate a development pathway to unlock shareholder value. We want to be part of this exciting activity that's happening in the Cobar region. So just to finish off, our projects are strategically located. We have a significant land footprint. We have existing copper resources, but we're determined to build that resource inventory up. There's a lot happening in the Cobar region, both in an exploration sense and in a development sense. And then you've got these interesting commercial activities or potential sales of the CSA mine, which is underwriting value into some of these deposits. We've got a very focused and skilled exploration team. We're just recruiting 2 more geologists, all based in Orange, right on the doorstep of our projects. And sitting in behind all of this, whilst volatile, we've got a really strong fundamental outlook for the copper price. And I think that makes a very exciting time to be an investor in Helix. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Mike. A great presentation, very comprehensive, and in a lot of ways answers a lot of the questions. And I would remind people, if they do have a question, please submit it in writing using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. All in copper, fully funded, big exploration programs across a large area. What does the drill program look like in terms of meterage, and how does that compare to previous years?
In previous years, in last year, which is probably the busiest drill year that the company's had for a very long time, I think we completed about 4,000 to 5,000 meters of drilling between reverse circulation and diamond drilling. We basically had an exploration team of 2. What we can do now is we're planning to drill something like 20 to 30,000 meters of drilling, probably half diamond RC, maybe 2/3 RC. And we're going to have a full-time exploration team of 4 geologists backed up by technicians and some expert consultants.
How important is it to have your technical people on the ground in Orange around your project area?
I think it's critical. Being based in Orange, which is blessed with many fine restaurants and wonderful vineyards and hinterland, not on our project area, so there's no land use conflicts. It means that our team goes home each night, more nights than not. They collaborate together. There's a real collegial, collaborative atmosphere that's built up. It just fosters this potent sort of technical atmosphere where people are thinking about the projects a lot more, rather than the sort of fly in, do the work, fly out, switch off, go away, or maybe go on to another job. I think it's really important to have locally based groups.
I suppose taking us inside the process of raising the capital, when you walk into this process, you always have in the back of your mind probably some positive thoughts and negative thoughts. You know, what does the market think? What do the investors think? Will I raise the money? How much will I get? All of those sort of things. What did you find walking into these institutions and funds, in a lot of cases for the first time? What did you find their reaction to Helix and your plans for Cobar Copper?
Well, we work very closely with Ashanti Capital, and they've been active with other clients in the area. So that was very helpful because many of their clients were already interested and aware of Cobar as an opportunity. The reason that we walked into that Ashanti area or that Ashanti opportunity and that kind of raise was because it was what we wanted to achieve. We wanted to achieve a large capital raise that removed uncertainty in terms of where's the next lot of funding coming from. And it was always the plan to raise 2 million to develop the concepts, 5 million to prove the technical concepts, and then 10 million to kind of bring it home, if you like, through drilling out resources and completing certain studies. It hasn't quite worked out that way because of some of those impacts on momentum and that I spoke about, but ultimately that has been the plan. Now, so it's kind of the desire to raise a large chunk to be absolutely meaningful and get a clear result. And the other thing was that the institutions that we were speaking with, who were introduced to us largely by Ashanti, that's what they wanted to see as well. They didn't want us to be in and out to the market every $2, $3, $4 million. They actually wanted an emphatic amount. They wanted to set themselves up and have a position in the company, and they wanted to see us then go out and do the work.
And in terms of the quantum raised and the level of support you received, were you surprised by how much support you actually have received from this segment of the funding market?
Yes, I was. Because the reality is that we're in a great location. There's a lot happening in the neighborhood. And as I said, people already had awareness. And I think Ashanti did a great job in sort of leading that. But also I think there was support for the strategic nature of our tenement block. And also the fact that the company had changed its focus and had changed its strategy to be solely focused on Cobar. And I think that got respect as well. So I think there was a combination of factors that came in.
When you came in, you clearly articulated and outlined a plan, as you've talked about in this presentation, around securing the funds, making sure there was focus, building out the technical capability, and then hitting the ground hard. You're sort of 12 months or so into the plan. Did you think you would get to where you are now when you came into Helix?
Don't take this the wrong way, but yes, it was the plan. And look, I have to be candid and say I'm a little bit disappointed that we're not more advanced in some respects because of those headwinds that I spoke about, both external issues in terms of managing things like COVID and the scarcity of labor and moving people around, floods, rain, cropping cycles, but also internal things, issues that we've had to deal with internally that sort of reflect some legacy matters that we've addressed. So look, I'm quite satisfied with where we are. I'm not satisfied with the share price, but I am satisfied with where we are technically. But I'm actually, and my team, we are super excited about the opportunities ahead. So we're seeing lots of opportunities for targets that we want to test. And now the guys know that in a disciplined way, we can methodically go around and test those targets.
Does the funding and sort of the shareholder base now give you that platform to to hopefully grow both the share price, but also the projects, like you say, in a methodical way. So not, piecemeal, let's do this, raise a bit more money, do this, raise more money. You can actually open the whole project portfolio up and say, we can hit all these things in a disciplined way, as you say, but without the constraint of we've got to get a result today because we may not have money if we don't.
Short answer is yes. I mean, one of the challenges for junior explorers, particularly when you're hunting for elephants, if you like, is there's got to be patience and persistence. And a junior company has to be prepared to take risks and fail. Exploration, as I've said many times before, is a numbers game. The more targets you test, the greater chance of success. But of course, that means that a lot of targets are going to fall away. And that's a risky behavior. You don't want to be telling people we tested target A, B, and C, and there's nothing there, but we're going on to do D, E, F. If you've got the momentum and the methodology to test lots of targets with well-funded position, you can afford to take those risks. And that's how you find elephants. The challenge for junior explorers is this balance between taking appropriate risks, but making sure you can generate news flow that keeps investors engaged.
Well, with this funding and the programs you have planned, there's definitely going to be no shortage of news flow, which is positive for investors who, as you say, crave that from the market. What does this funding mean in terms of the time scale of work that you can do, free of the constraint of needing to raise more capital?
Okay, so in terms, actually, just one other point with your previous question. I mean, to get that kind of very strong institutional support from probably 50